Welcome back to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's Wednesday Wisdom guest, but first let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate tremendous amounts of revenue for your school, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. We were one of the first schools in Florida to have a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table, and it's just fantastic. You really need to check it out. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thank you to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They've got a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles and an entire library of templates to help recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, and go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. You can also email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com to get started. If you're looking for a great way to display your school records for all your sports, every event, along with creating a great online Hall of Fame, go to walloffame.com and check out their products. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Final Forms. Final Forms is the industry leader in registration, but they're more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility, and they have reminders for parents about policies and about physicals and all the forms that go with athletics. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like communication and attendance, and even help them manage their certification process. For athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and with all the reports that come across your desk. And it does this with secure language translation. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and start seeing how athletic departments and coaches are creating world-class content for their school's social media channel. You can do it in seconds, and you don't need any additional training. As I like to say, it's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com and start creating world-class marketing content. Tell them you heard about it on the podcast and use the code ADPOD10. That's ADPOD10, ADPOD10, and get 10% off your Gipper platform. That's Gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. They sponsor the AD Toolbox segment of our regular podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. We use surveys for just about everything at my schools, for coaches, for teachers, parents, you name it. And the feedback we got was almost always positive. But the surveys did allow that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little bit. And also, sometimes they'd share a minor problem that we could address that keeps it from turning into a big problem because we didn't know about it because we hadn't done a survey. Go to athleticsurveys.com or send them an email at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Hometown helps thousands of organizations across the country seamlessly provide convenient digital ticketing options to their community, their families, and their fans. Go to hometownticketing.com and they will show you how to sell your tickets, how to scan the attendees that come to the games, how to collect your revenue, And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager to provide hands-on support. Once again, go to hometownticketing.com and they'll show you how to sell tickets for all kinds of events, such as school plays or band performances, even dances and graduation. Go to hometownticketing.com and start selling tickets simple and easy with their online ticketing. That's hometownticketing.com. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Go to huddle.com and see how Huddle helps schools elevate the performance of their teams using video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They've got online tools, they have smart cameras, they've always had analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from club and youth programs all the way through high school and colleges. And you're in pretty good company with over 6 million users. As a football coach, I used Huddle, and as an athletic director, we were a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved it. Once again, go to huddle.com and see how they can help you and your program help your athletes play better using video and analytics. That's huddle.com. And we want to say thanks to SnapRaise. Go to SnapRaise.com and see how their fundraising platform can help you. Get away from the fundraising headaches of the past. There's no selling, there's no managing of lists, there's no upfront costs. And what's more important, it works. Okay. Our coaches use SnapRaise and it was just fantastic. And as an AD, choosing the best fundraiser for you and your group is critical. And you need to put the SnapRaise digital difference to work for you. As I said, it's so easy to use and it works. SnapRaise has helped programs raise over $500 million, that's billion with a B, dollars, and they can do that for you. Okay. Give your fundraising game plan a change and start a fundraiser that works for you. Go to snapraise.com and start raising money. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. This week, we've got the founding member of our Wednesday Wisdom team, Betsy Butterick, the communication coach. She's back with us. Betsy, I think is this your third go around for Wednesday Wisdom?
Yes.
She actually was the individual that came up with the name of our segment, Wednesday Wisdom. So I'm going to shut up. Betsy Butterick, what do you have for us on this week's Wednesday Wisdom?
Well, thanks for having me back, Jake. It's always nice to share this space with you and to hopefully drop some knowledge as it relates to communication. Something that came up for me recently was I was talking with a coach and she was mentioning how her players really like each other, like they've got great team chemistry. And in part because of that, they often take things personally that aren't meant to be personal. And what she said was, I want to tell them like they need to toughen up, like they need to have thicker skin. And I said, okay, here's the thing about when you tell someone they need to have thicker skin, what judgments or assumptions are inherent in that phrase? And she said, well, that they're not tough or that they're too sensitive or maybe too emotional. I said, right. So what if there was a different way? Instead of making a judgment about where they are, how could we tell them what we want instead of telling them maybe what we think they are, which may not be accurate for everyone, right? So instead of saying you need to have thicker skin, what else could you say? And we worked through the dialogue a little bit. What we got to was really a two-step process. So when someone says something, gives you some kind of feedback, if it doesn't land right with you, either tone or content or anything, commit to having a follow-up with it. Before that, though, and I mentioned it was a two-part process, before that, have the open-mindedness to assume positive intent. So despite whoever is in front of me, whether I know them, don't know them, whether I've had a history with them, maybe it hasn't been the most positive or not, can I take information from other people, assuming the best of intentions, like assuming this person has my best interest at heart and that they're here to help me in a positive, supportive way. If you assume positive intent and you take that feedback in and it still doesn't sit well with you, can you commit to having a follow-up conversation? And in that conversation, can you be specific? Hey, Jake, I appreciate that you gave me feedback. You don't have to appreciate the feedback. I appreciate that you gave me feedback because I'm committed to learning and growing. I have a question. When you said this, can you clarify for me what you meant? Because what I took from it was this. Was that your intention? Now, if they're a complete jerk and they're like, yeah, that was my intention, at least now you know, okay? But we haven't assumed. So I'd say that's one piece is this instead of telling people to toughen up or tell people you need to have thicker skin, tell them what they can actively do with feedback that might be challenging or feel off. And in doing so, help them have better quality conversations to create relationship within your team or organization. The other thing that has come up recently, and I'm trying to think, there were two things that I wanted to share. And the second one was,
Well, you want me to jump in here real quick?
yeah, will you?
Well, as you were talking, and again, our podcast, we're kind of talking to athletic directors and coaches, and maybe that dynamic, as an athletic director is telling a coach or talking to a coach, as opposed to a coach talking to a kid. And I've used the example back in my day, 100 years ago, as a
Mm,
high school athlete, our coaches would say, come on, you got to be tough. And whatever we were doing, running laps or doing up downs, we kind of knew what they meant and we did it. But nowadays, I think we have much better ways to communicate to kids, and we still want them to be tough, but I think we do a better job, much better job of explaining, okay, this is what we mean, this is what we want you to do, and this is going to help us all become tougher. So as an
right.
AD talking to a coach, it's a little bit different, but that dialogue, that back and forth can actually occur much more easily than say with a coach and a student,
Hmm.
just because of the, for lack of a better word, the power dynamic.
Yeah. Well, even, I think about that word personally, right? And person is part of that word. And usually these conversations happen between people. And I think for many people, especially if it's unpracticed, it's difficult to not take difficult things personally or as a reflection of the person. And that's one thing, and we might have talked about this at some point, Jake, but it's a different thing to say you're a selfish person or you made a selfish choice. Like one is a judgment of character. They're going to take that personally versus you as a person, separate from all your other qualities and characteristics, have made a decision that I view as selfish. And it's with that sort of language and that differentiation that we can help people stop taking things personally.
No, and I think that's a great way to phrase that is, and like you said, the person's a jerk. Hey, you're a selfish jerk.
Right.
Versus, hey, I think you made, a poor choice there. And, that's
Yeah.
far less demeaning. Okay?
Yeah. So you mentioned, and we're talking about feedback. And I remember the second thing that I wanted to touch on today was oftentimes when someone brings something to us, especially when it's something that's difficult to hear, maybe a bit of time has passed since the original incident or occurrence. And oftentimes, as a coach or an AD, our first response is, why didn't you tell me sooner? Right? Because we're like, gosh, if I had this information, I could have taken different actions. We wouldn't be in the place that we're in. Very human response. What's challenging in that response is, why didn't you tell me sooner? Has an undertone of blame or criticism for the person of you, person who has this issue or had this knowledge, is responsible for not bringing it to me sooner, which may be part of what we're feeling. And as an administrator or coach, what we really need is for that information to flow to us faster in the future. So instead of saying, why didn't you come to me sooner? Or why didn't you tell me sooner? What might better facilitate that flow of information in the future would be something along the lines of, okay, thank you for telling me, start with gratitude. What needs to happen so that we can have this conversation sooner in the future? Or what needs to shift or change so that you feel more comfortable bringing this to me in the future? We can't change the past, but we can change that individual's experience of bringing us the thing that's difficult to hear, while also ideally facilitating that conversation happening in a shorter time frame moving forward.
Yeah. And again, me, we, I think we all want to see the best in ourselves. And as an AD, I did have people tell me this, hopefully it was true, that, when that problem occurred, whether it's somebody in your office and, hey, this happened, or just something happens in the middle of a game and it blows up. Um, I always tried to be a solution finder. Okay, how can we make this better? So when that
Yeah.
coach came and said, "Oh, geez, I blew up at a kid," or I just yelled at a parent, whatever it was, I don't think I would say, "Oh, you stupid jerk, why did you do that?" I would say, "Okay, what happened? How can we make this better?"
Yeah.
I think most ADs are wired that way, solution finders rather than just piling on.
hmm I hope so. I mean, I haven't talked to all ADs, so I don't know for sure, but I do know that many ADs currently are challenged by the variety of stressors or unique challenges that are posed by not only today's student athlete, but by today's parents sometimes as well, or by certain donors, or the way that, different ideologies have divided groups of people within our schools or our organization. So I hope, yes, that everyone is solution oriented. And as a human, I know that it's very normal to have a reaction of like, there's so much I could have done proactively if I'd known this sooner. So that momentary feeling of like, why didn't you tell me? But being solution focused, especially in your profession, is so helpful and beneficial for helping to eliminate issues before they become problems.
Yeah, and I think also that reaction might depend on, well, 3 months ago I did this, and then 2 months ago I did this, and it kept getting worse, and now last week it really got bad, and so I'm bringing it to you now. I've had a couple of those situations
Yeah,
as well, and that's where you're thinking, hopefully thinking, why didn't you tell me 3 months ago? But
yeah.
again, supporting your staff, helping them overcome that challenge, not being judgmental. And I think that's, an overriding theme with the lessons that you share is, not being judgmental, treating people, the way they should be to get the best out of them. That's what I get from our conversations.
Yeah. And it's hard not to be judgmental. I actually, candidly, I got off a conversation with a coach, potential new coaching client. She's a first time head coach. And it was right before we got on for today's podcast. And she said, I was looking for different mentors in my sport. And I've worked with a coach before, I've worked with a sports psychologist, but those people told me most often when I shared what I was thinking or how I was going to say something, they're like, well, that's wrong. Like, don't do it that way, but they didn't give me supportive help. She said, so I just want to know how you work with people. And I said, it's not my job to judge. I said, you might say something and I might have a judgment internally, but that's not supportive for you. Like my job isn't to judge you or to change you. It's to give you options for engaging in a way that allows you to show up authentically and do more of what you want to do. Um, so again, it's interesting, and I find myself in this place often of like the judgment piece is human, and I try to be conscious of not trying to eliminate judgment altogether, but noticing when I have a judgment, questioning why that judgment is there, and also releasing it in service of coming back into the present situation or to be with that person.
Oh no, absolutely. Again, we all want to, hear the good things about ourselves. It's hard to hear, when we have made a misstep. But it's like you said earlier, it's not, you're not a jerk. You just made, maybe
A
you
jerk
made a poor
decision.
choice, jerk
Yeah.
decision. Yeah, got to
Yeah.
find a better word for that, I guess, or maybe
We'll
not.
work on it. We'll
Yeah.
work on it. Yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat again. It's always good to see you and to support the listeners as well.
Well, again, we appreciate you giving up your valuable time for our listeners. If one of our listeners wants to reach out and find out more about Betsy Butterick and the communication coach um, benefits program, how do they get in touch with you?
You can go to betsybutterick.com. All of my contact information is there. There's a contact form that you can fill out if there's something specific that you want to ask about or you'd like to set up a conversation between the two of us. You can also follow me on Twitter at Betsy Butterick or on Instagram at Betsy underscore the coach's coach. YouTube would be the other point of access that I direct folks to. There's, I think, 40 or 41 active communication technique videos. They're short 2-minute videos designed to give anybody, not just those in athletics, but anybody something that they can do today to impact the way that we communicate and connect with each other.
Okay. And a couple more things. As our regular listeners know, every single one of our episodes of the Wednesday Wisdom and our interviews get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. So you can go back and see all the episodes that Betsy has shared with us. And for those of you listening this morning, Wednesday, August 24th, Later on this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern, Betsy is going to be a guest on another great athletic director podcast, Hanging with the ADs. That's Don Baker and Josh Matthews. I think you might have to go to hangingwiththead.com and register. There's no cost for it, but Betsy's going to be presenting on their great podcast some more wisdom, and it happens to be on a Wednesday.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. Thanks for tuning in today, listeners. We'll see you again next week for more Wednesday wisdom, and just about every day on the Educational AD Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, we want to thank everyone for listening to Wednesday Wisdom, and we want to say thanks to our sponsors one more time. I want to thank Sideline Interactive. Our school was one of the first in Florida to have a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table. It's just fantastic. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Also want to thank Wall of Fame. The FIAAA has a Wall of Fame indoor console for our organization's Hall of Fame, and you should get one for your school. They also make great video record boards for all your sports, all the events. You can't believe it. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Also want to say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle. As an athletic director, we were a Huddle school. Our coaches just loved the analytics, the smart cameras, the programmability. Go to huddle.com and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to thank Gipper. Go to gipper.com and start creating world-class marketing content for your school's social media channels. It's so easy. Go to gipper.com and start creating world-class content. Also mention you heard it on the podcast, you'll get a 10% discount. Also want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. We use surveys for everything at my schools, from coaches to kids to parents. And the information we got back was almost always over the top positive. But the surveys also allowed that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little bit and sometimes share a small issue that we could address and keep it from turning into a big issue because we didn't know about it because we hadn't done a survey. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. Hometown Ticketing is also a supporter, and Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com and see how they can help your school. That's hometownticketing.com. Also want to say thanks to Final Forms. Final Forms is the industry leader in registration, and they can help your stakeholders, your coaches, and you with all the things that come with athletics, policies, physicals, attendance, communication, eligibility rosters, you name it. Go to finalforms.com/Jake for more information. That's finalforms.com/Jake. And finally, want to say thanks to SnapRaise.com. Go to SnapRaise.com and find out the SnapRaise difference for fundraising. Our coaches use SnapRaise.com for their fundraising efforts, and it was just fantastic. I knew what was going on, but I wasn't involved. There's no forms, there's no upfront cost, and what's more important, it works. They've raised schools thousands and thousands of dollars, and your school can be the same. Go to SnapRaise.com for more information. Once again, we appreciate you listening to Wednesday Wisdom. Come back next week for more Wednesday Wisdom and just about every single day for the Educational AD Podcast. Have a great day.